Okay, let's get started, everyone. So this is identifying red flags in college applications, key factors to consider. I'm Ana Emilia, I'm a student at the University of Chicago, and I'm going to be sharing with you guys some tips and some advice on how to make sure that your college application is ready right before you submit it, because I know that last minute review can get a little bit overwhelming. Let's get started. What are some common mistakes with college applications? Number one, spelling mistakes. This happens often, and it's just really important to make sure you either have somebody else read over your application or use Grammarly or a spell check, because even if it's a tiny little mistake, um, it is very much red flag because it's showing colleges that you were haphazard about the whole thing and kind of turned it in at the last minute. So it's really important to double check for spelling mistakes. Um, Second, this one is also very common, using a standard cookie cutter prompt for a supplemental. So let's say you got injured during a sports game. Don't write about that. A lot of kids are going to be writing about that. Choose an essay that's unique to you, something that doesn't even have to be a sad story or a really difficult situation, just something that you're passionate about and something that you know you can write a good essay on. That is going to be so much better than writing about the time that you got hurt during the game, or the time that you couldn't, um, or the time that you failed biology and you had to make it up. I don't know. Try to be more original and think of things that make you unique. That's like the same thing as the second one, using a common prompt or story. So those are the common ones. I'm sure you've heard of them. Um, Having too many or too little extracurriculars, it's important to show that you were passionate about some topics. So if you have 10 extracurriculars, but four of them you were only there for the meetings, or you were only there for 1 year, and they didn't really have an impact on you, just remove them from your application. That is so much better than having 10 extracurriculars that were kind of whatever for your high school experience, and then having 3 or 4 that were totally formative and really important to you. Those are more important to display. Not explaining an unfamiliar extracurricular. This is especially important for international students, because a lot of times um, extracurriculars here have a different name, or there might be a foundation that has a different name, and college admissions might not be familiar with what your organization or your extracurricular does. So it's really important to explain it. And inconsistencies. This is the most common one that college admissions people get, as it was explained to me by a college admissions officer. Um, a lot of times there can be a dip in grades, or just one class that you completely failed, or one semester without any extracurriculars. And that really throws off college admissions officers because they don't know what to make of it. Like, was this person just irresponsible this year, or were they going through something? So it's important to notice where your inconsistencies are. So, what might these look like? For the generic why us essay, describing the generic aspects of a university. I want to go to blank because of its high rankings and its international recognition. Even though this might be true for so many other schools, and there's nothing specific to the university. This happens so much because if you have to write 10 supplemental essays, 10 YS essays for 10 different schools, it might be really tempting to just want to Command F and find and replace University of Chicago for Northwestern University. But college admissions doesn't like this, because you want to prove to them why that school is perfect for you. So you've got to make the essay really, really personal. Having a year or semester with a clear dip in grade. So from all A's and a couple of B's in 1 year to all C's and 1 or 2 B's in the next. So this is a very sudden change that's apparent in your report card. Leaving elements unexplained. So I was a volunteer for XYZ Foundation. Okay, what foundation? What do they do? What was your role? If you say, oh, volunteer for blank. Okay, what exactly were you doing with them? What was your job? What did the work entail? You really have to explain this. So how do I fix them or avoid them? Explain. This is the most important thing that when I was going through the college admissions process, what all the counselors said to explain. If you had a semester where you were sick or you were in the hospital or you moved or one of your family members was sick and your home responsibilities increased by a lot, make sure you explain them. So college admissions counselors want to stay in the loop of what was going on in your life if you had a semester or year with sudden changes. So use the additional information section. Again, keeping it clear and concise. Don't try to make this a second essay, but write that on your application so the college admissions officer can understand, okay, she didn't do soccer this semester because she was involved in this other thing. If timelines don't match up, oh, this feel free to write, oh, my first semester, my junior year, I decided to try the intensive track in one of my classes and ended up doing the lighter version of this extracurricular. So explain to them. This again only goes for important things. If you say, oh, I was late to this class one day, and so I missed that lesson, and then I missed that test, and because of that test, I got a C on my final grade. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about big changes. So one example I can give you is one of my friends moved temporarily and then came back. So she didn't start the semester with us at school. She did it somewhere else, but then winter came back and she came back, and there were some classes that she couldn't take. So because she didn't start, let's say, AP World History in the fall with everybody, she couldn't take it. So she had to wait until the year after. Those are the types of things I'm talking about that are important. Yes, so if you couldn't start a class when you were supposed to, things like that. Extracurricular. So it really, really works to your advantage to give context to your extracurricular activities, especially if these are unknown outside your school or city. So like one example, I volunteered for a foundation called Familia del Valle. And first of all, that's in Spanish. A lot of admissions counselors won't know what that means. And it doesn't really give context to what we were doing. So in the description, I wrote, oh, I did research for this foundation that looked to reduce the homeless population in my city. And then kind of going further and explaining. So make sure you're not just sticking to it, even though it's something that's very common in Mexico, like trying to think of a foundation that I know. I can't remember the name right now, but I know there's a very common foundation, something with a T. Can't remember right now, but even it's like Teletón, like that's a horrible example, but Teletón is one example of a foundation that's, yes, that's very common in Mexico and everybody knows what that is. But in the United States, people won't know. So you have to make sure to kind of explain. Second, if you feel like the limits are too strict and you cannot explain properly, but you feel like this is a totally important, like essential part of your high school experience, mention them in an essay or in the initial information, but be careful not to mention too many extracurriculars. Admissions officers want to know about the ones that had the most impact on you. So don't be afraid to cut out an activity that you did for 3 months in your first semester of high school. And this, I have so many examples of this. Have another example for the name one. My high school theater group was called Club de Literatura Hispana Abriendo Puertas, CLAB. Okay, what does that mean? So it's better to summarize to CLAB and then write CLAB theater group, and then write what you did within that. Oh, I was the president and blah, blah, blah. So it's just really important to context, because to an admissions officer that's reading a lot of these over and over again, it's really difficult for them they won't go the extra mile and look it up on Google. A lot of times you can't even find it on Google. So it's just really important to make sure that you're explaining and giving context. Again, if you did debate, for example, or student government, don't be afraid to write, don't feel like it's necessary to write, blank high school debate club. No, just write debate. Or student government, you don't have to write, Asociación de Estudiantes. No, it's fine to just write student government and then keep it swing. And yes, please don't be afraid to cut out the extracurriculars that weren't that important. We hear over and over again that extracurriculars are important, but that doesn't mean that you have to include every single one. Like I did art club for my second semester freshman year, but I dropped out of art club and I didn't really do much with it. So it's just much more important to give more importance to the ones that were important to you. Oh, was that it? Yeah. Okay, so some questions. Oh yeah, this is the one. Yeah. Okay, I was missing a slide. I'm sorry. So in avoiding generic essays, a good trick to double check if your essay is too generic is to remove the university's name from your essay. If you reread it and you can still identify what school it is, or if it couldn't be more than like two schools at the most, you're safe. This goes to show that a lot of essays are just so similar because it's pretty obvious if you're looking at schools with a good physics program in the Northeast, a lot of them are going to sound the same. Oh, I'm really excited to be in the Northeast in a big city, and your physics program is amazing. And I'm so excited to participate in the robotics club. Okay, that can apply to so many schools. So it's really important to kind of just pinpoint exactly what you want from each school. And this is kind of time consuming, but it really can just help you so much because a school wants to know like why them specifically. So I can think, for example, for the University of Chicago, I'm minoring in Romance languages. And I mentioned how the classroom, the building, the languages building was 2 blocks away from the social sciences building, which is my other major, and how that walk, and I was like, oh, in that walk, I'll encounter this coffee shop. And then I might stumble into a friend learning physics at the science center. And 3 steps to my right is going to be the blank Center for Student Success. So just being really specific about each school and what they can offer you. And a really easy way to do this is to look up student groups. So this isn't something I did, but in hindsight, I could have done, is I'm interested in theater, although I don't do it anymore. I so could have written, oh, I want to join university theater as a director, or oh, I'm looking at this comedy group, Occam's Razor, and they do improv, and I'd love to be a part of that. And write that into your essay and kind of like, it doesn't even have to be something you already did. Something I do now is model UN at college, and I never did it in high school. And that's just one example. Oh, I might want to try out this club because I don't know much about it and it looks interesting. Write that down. I hope that's clear. Like make sure you're just being um, really just pinpointing exact, like specific things from the university that you want. Not just, oh, the amazing um, chemistry professors. I don't know why I'm saying chemistry and physics as well. I'm like nothing like that. But also mentioning professors is a very common one, but make sure you're smart about it. I had a friend freak out because 2 weeks after she turned in her application, she realized the professor that she had talked about had left the school 2 years before. And so she tried to be really specific, but it just kind of backfired. So just try to be conscious. Another good like rule of thumb that I hear a lot of people say is if you can find this information on the first page of the university website, that's not specific enough. You have to go further in and further in. And for the clubs and groups, it might be a little harder, but I just look up on Instagram or Facebook, and usually that's where they find you can like for U Chicago, Model UN is just U Chicago MUN, or the Mexican Association at U Chicago, which I'm a part of. It's just U Chicago Mex. So you can go through each school, like I don't know, U Michigan theater, or it's just about going in and take your time with this research. It's really beneficial. And yeah, so it'll just give you, it also might make you feel more familiarized with the school once you get there. If you end up going there, it's just better to know what you're going into. So some questions. How do I make sure I'm not missing something? Oh, How do I make sure I'm not missing something? This is really, really just important to have a clear timeline of when you're applying to everything. I can double check that you're not putting the wrong files in the wrong part of the Common App. This is a really common mistake because you're gonna have, like, for example, I wrote all my essays on Google Docs. So I logged into Google Docs, and on the picture, on the first website window, there was you like Boston University supplemental, Boston College supplemental, U Chicago supplemental. Make sure you title those exactly as what they are, because it's just really, you don't want to risk putting in the U Chicago supplemental in your Boston University application, and it can happen. Who should I ask to review my application? So if you don't have a counselor at your school, and if you're not using Education USA, um, usually a friend or somebody older, maybe somebody you know that's already in college. For me, it was a couple people 2 years older than me who were already at college. They go to UC Berkeley, and they did me a huge favor, and they looked over my application and just pinpointed really important stuff. Things like, oh, make sure you explain a little bit more about this, or oh, what exactly did you do with that? So just make sure somebody's reviewing your application, or also even yourself. Like my personal statement, the Common App essay, the most important essay of your application, I wrote it, and I wrote it all in one sitting. I was really proud of it, and I was really happy. And then I read it 3 days later, and I was like, oh my God, I need to organize this. So I deleted and rewrote and fixed, and just give yourself time. This is why it's really important to you to, again, the clear timeline. Don't leave anything for the last minute, because then you won't be able to catch these mistakes. It's better to do things early on and then take the week before just for review and double checking everything. Just make sure everything's like perfect, and don't be too stressed about it. It is a very stressful process, but as long as you break it down, you should be fine. Um, so what else should I add? This is a huge question, but just make sure you're not leaving anything unsaid that you feel like has to be said. So if, I don't know, if you're like, this was one example that was given to me for my Familia del Valle, my community service. I wasn't the founder and I wasn't the president, but I was the head of research. I was the person that did the research and gave the ideas, and write that down. Even if you weren't, I don't know, soccer team captain, but you were the person that, I don't know, made sure that everybody went to games, or I was the one giving a ride to all of my teammates. You can write that down. Oh, supported teammates in getting to games safely. It's just really important to make sure that everything that took your time in a positive way and a negative way too. If you had any, like I had to drive my siblings to school, and sometimes that made me late, or I had to, I don't know, I couldn't get a job because I wouldn't have time to. So write that, oh, I had to drive my siblings to school every morning, and in the afternoon I had to drive them back, which took time from this. All of that, like list it, add that. I already said this in the extracurriculars info session that we had, but make sure you're listing everything that has to be said. And yeah, these are my questions. If you guys have any questions, you can write them in the chat or ask right now, and I'll be happy to answer them to the best of my abilities. I'm gonna go over the red flags real quick. Yeah, so these are it. Have any question? Now is the time to ask. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, a little bit of an advice, because from my in 10th grade to 11th grade, I moved countries from Brazil to Mexico, and that involved a lot of like academic processes, and a lot of my extracurriculars got like changed all the place, because, for example, in Brazil there's a lot of academic Olympiads, and in Mexico not that much. So you can see that change on my curriculum. So I wanted an advice on how what's the best way for me as an expat to explain all that situation.
Okay, so for something like that, I really just think using the additional information section on the Common App would be really helpful and really important because you can write, oh, I moved from Brazil to Mexico and this changed. So list down, oh, this extracurricular, like these extracurriculars aren't available in Mexico. And the grading system is like, for example, oh, the grading system is different. And this is why there's a jump. And the additional information section on your Common App, when they, because they print it out or they choose it as a PDF, it's right there, like below your extracurricular. So trust me, people are reading this. So as long as you make sure you really explain, oh, this jump and this is why, like you should be safe. And they'll also see if, let's say, your extracurriculars have a list and there's some that were, make sure you list the beginning and ending times clearly too, so they can see, oh, this is when, like, this is clearly the jump. And if you also, if you feel like this is a very, something that changed a lot and something that you feel like you would want to write about for an essay, maybe write it in one of your essays. And that way they can kind of see, oh, that it really was, it had a deep impact on you and this is what changed and this is what was new. So yeah, so just use the additional information section. Make sure you're clearly setting the timelines for your extracurriculars. And yeah, and you can also make this a positive thing. Say, oh, because I couldn't find the extracurriculars I did back then, I joined this one instead and I became involved in this. And I was still looking for ways to become involved. So it's just really important to make sure that you let the college admissions officers know. But yeah, you should be fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You can also write them in the chat. Okay, then I guess this is all for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We have a lot more events coming up these next 2 weeks. This Wednesday, we're going to be having a Q&A with 2 other students from the University of Chicago. And it's kind of a free-for-all questions. You can ask about whatever. And we're really excited about that event. You can find it on our Linktree or on our social media. The registration's open. We also still have our SAT tutoring sessions, conversation clubs. Feel free to join us for all of them. And yeah, the registration's in our Linktree. Thank you so much, everybody. See you. Thank you
Thanks
for
for everything.
coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.